much for taking our time to come celebrate this morning. We'd like to invite and welcome some very distinguished personalities to the top table. They're going to come forward at this time to occupy their seats. Ladies and gentlemen, we will appreciate that we please put our hands together for them when they come up to occupy their seats here. We have in our midst His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Akin State. He's also the chairman of today's event and is going to come up at this time to occupy his seat. Please put your hands together for Dr. Kirby Fayoni, the chairman of today's event, His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Akin State. How please put our hands together for him. You're welcome, sir. In that same vein, we'd like to also recognize and welcome to the high table, ladies and gentlemen. Please, I'd like us to put our hands together to welcome Prince Julius Adelusi Adeli. To welcome you to the high table, to join us. Please, I'd like us to put our hands together. Thank you. Come on, put our hands together for Prince Julius Adeli one more time. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Also, to join us, on the top table this morning, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to respectfully invite and welcome an erudite scholar, Professor Anya O. Anya. Please put your hands together for Professor as he comes forward. Thank you. Now please put our hands together for Prof one more time. Thank you very much. Thank you. Also to join us on the top table at this time, ladies and gentlemen, is our guest lecturer today, a very distinguished personality, Nigerian journalist, politician, TV anchor, newspaper columnist, and the former special advisor on media and publicity to President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as I respectfully invite and welcome Dr. Ruben Abati. How please put our hands together for him. Thank you very much, sir. We also like to invite and welcome at this time another very distinguished personality, an erudite scholar by excellence, ladies and gentlemen. Please put your hands together as we respectfully invite and welcome Professor Osuntokun. Please put your hands together for him. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to specially recognize everybody. We acknowledge your presence. We say thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to respectfully recognize and appreciate the presence of Senator Ibikunle Amosun. Please put your hands together for him. FCA, can we celebrate him, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you very much for coming. We also have in our midst Excellency Tony Saraki, the former First Lady of Kwara State. Please put your hands together for her. We also have Dr. Wali Babalaki in our midst. Now please put our hands together for him. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you that more recognitions are going to be done as soon as we have more names and the proper designation. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we're about to have the chairman's opening address. He's going to come forward at this time to speak about development and ABS progress. Dr. Coyote, please put your hands together for him as he comes forward at this time to give his address. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, our celebrants, the Diamond Jubilee men, friends, sisters and brothers. It is a pleasure and a privilege for me to be here this morning to celebrate my friend, my brother, my kinsman from Ekiti, as you all know. Somebody was asking me after the national anthem that don't we have an Ekiti anthem to celebrate Akin? And I said, of course we do, but although Akin is from us, he's not necessarily completely of us. He has traversed the length and breadth of our country and is recognized for his intellect and for his passion and commitment to Nigeria. As much as he is as Balogun of in Ekiti. When Akin asked me to do this and informed me that the lecture would focus on public intellectuals and that Ruben will give the talk, of course, Akin being a public intellectual himself, one is not surprised that he has chosen to reflect on the place of public intellectuals in the making of democracy and development. Those of us who have known Akin for a long time, we know that he started this barely as a toddler. He's been writing for as long as many of us can remember. Not just because he is from a political family. He was born in the crucible of the struggles of the wild, wild west in the early 60s. And his father, as many of us may be fully aware, was in the thick of that. A stellar educationist who brought up a generation of Ekiti scholars from the school. There's only one school in Nigeria. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that school. And of course, GCI boys, they may want to contain my point about the school, and those from Greg and IC2 may raise their issue about the Arao case. But Chief Osuntokun was a high master in the school. Christ School at Ekiti. Oxford, and at least 2 generations of the Osuntokun actively attended the school. Akin also happened to be the product of Christ School himself. Not to mention Professor J.D. Osuntokun, the revived late neurologist, Professor Kayode Osuntokun, Chief Osuntokun himself, and several other Osuntokun, not to mention the rest of us from that part of the country. So Akin has demonstrated this in his career, right from his days in journalism, and then when he moved on to the public space in politics as MD of News Agency of Nigeria, as political advisor to Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, and in his consistent intellectual display of strong views on Nigerian politics and public space. Of course, when you're talking about public intellectuals, there are those who see public intellectuals to be the pessimists, always criticizing, ones who reflect on the basis of their expertise. If you're familiar with Akin's writings, the first thing that strikes you is the inscrutability of his writing. Before Igogomidogo, there was Akin Osuntokun. So you need to sometimes put your dictionary on one side when you want to read Akin's column. But I think that derives from the depth of his knowledge and his erudition and the passion with which he attacks the subject that he's interested in. And when you look into this audience, you see that Akin has friends from all over. Friends from the corporate world, and don't forget, he was also in the corporate world. He was at one time the image maker of the Dangote company. So it's not surprising that you have business moguls, corporate lawyers, intellectuals, politicians, public participants themselves, leaders of civil society. They are all here to honor a man who we regard as a friend and as an intellectual subaltern in the struggle for a better Nigeria. I worked with Akin not as a member of the same political party, but as a member of the same movement. When the Progressive Action Movement came in the early days, the young ones who wanted to break into the political firmament and wanted to get rid of the old fuddy-duddies who were dominating the scene. That was how we described things at the time. But we've since grown and we've learned lessons and we've come to terms with the nature of politics, and that it is not always the case that the older ones, full of experience, will leave the scene for us to just come and take the space. We have to struggle for the space. We have to demonstrate why we consider ourselves better than the older ones and why we are going to do a lot better in the transformation agenda for a better society. These are all the issues that I'm sure my brother Ruben Abati would delve into in his lecture. So I don't want to give another lecture. My role is just to welcome you all to this occasion and to celebrate a friend, a brother, an intellectual pugilist, and a reverend promoter of core belief, particularly belief relating to restructuring the Nigerian state, and a very proud Ekiti man who sees himself as a warrior, whether he's fighting the war through the pen, and by the way, he believes that the pen is mightier than the sword, or he is fighting as Balogun of Okemesi. Either way, we know that Akin has made tremendous contribution to a better society. But the job is not finished. The struggle continues. And we know that Akin will still have a rarefied place in that struggle always. So I welcome you to this August event, and we look forward to an intellectually engaging
Father Prince Julius Adelusi, Father Professor Ayao Aya, our Father Professor Akin Osuntokun. All distinguished personalities here present. I can see my former governors, Senator Ibikunle and the man who is representing my constituency at the National Assembly. Iba Otumba Gani Adams, I salute you. All the distinguished persons here present, I recognize you. Well, my task is very simple. I've been asked to say a few things. So in this kind of situation, maybe I should just go ahead and read my prepared script. I'll try to shorten it. It's much longer than this. If I see that you are feeling uncomfortable with it, I'll maybe shorten it a little bit more. Well, the title I was given is Consistency in Public Intellectual Advocacy, a Nigerian case study. I've modified that to read Consistency in Public Intellectual Advocacy, Akin Osuntokun's role in Nigeria's ideas industry. I want to thank the organizers of the 60th birthday anniversary event in honor of Balogun Akin Osuntokun for inviting me to say a few words about the themes of consistency in relation to public intellectual advocacy and to focus on the Nigerian case study. In doing so, I join others in congratulating the celebrant and subject on his attainment of the Diamond Jubilee. I cannot think of another case study as a departure point for my commentary than Akin Osuntokun himself. Although an inquiry into the nature of the ideas industry in Nigeria with specific emphasis on public intellectual advocacy will be incomplete without additional illustrations of the role of others in that nexus between culture, politics, and society, which is the province of the operation of the public intellectual, as opposed to the strict academic intellectual and writer who is burdened by the demands of specificity and disciplinarity. I make no clear-cut distinction in this regard, however, and the reason for this will be clear in a moment. Ahead of this particular occasion, I had written a tribute to Akin Osuntokun in my weekly back page column in the This Day newspaper, titled Akin Osuntokun at 60 by Ruben Abati, which is a reflection of my knowledge of him as a person and a portrait of his life as I know it. The present commentary can be taken as a further reading of the subject, but within the specific context of his exertions in the public domain. I seek to raise questions and navigate the subject as follows. The literature on the subject of public intellectualism suggests that there is no clear single definition of who a public intellectual is, might be, or become. In the same sense, for example, in which we talk about a carpenter or a tailor, this absence of specificity speaks to a certain diversity and plurality with regard to context, range, and the central figures that are featured in the ideas industry in different parts of the globe. Every public intellectual is to be understood in the context of the role that he or she plays or the theater of his or her engagement. Hence, Edward Said, the Palestinian-American scholar, wrote that, and I quote, the definition of who or what a writer, an individual is, has become more confusing and difficult to pin down. What does it mean, for example, to be public? Does that suggest the idea of a private intellectual? The public, after all, is an open space. What part of the public? And who really is an intellectual? In many political and cultural contexts, the word intellectual indeed attracts a negative connotation, if not adversarial revulsion. You had the Dr. Friday saying earlier that public intellectuals are considered censorious characters. This is the point I'm making here. But being an intellectual, a public intellectual, is not a job. Except perhaps you are an academic intellectual working in a research environment. And yet, it is possible to be academic and not public, and to be a public intellectual and be academic, or provide ample primary material for academic work. Thus, there are many uses of the word intellectual and attitudes towards it. Edward Said sees the intellectual as a critical outsider. Jean Poussard considers him a person of action. Michael Walzer, the American political theorist, sees him as a caring insider. Akin fits easily into each of these definitions, an indication of the scope of his engagement in the public space. Whereas definitions of meanings and labels may seem academic, there seems to be very little confusion with regard to the role that the public intellectual plays in society, beginning with the production of ideas and the creation of what Amitai Exioni calls communities of assumptions. That is, assumptions about how society should be organized in a more utilitarian and beneficial manner. The contribution of the public intellectual is to question received assumptions, create new ones by asking questions again and again about public policy and cultural constructions. Public intellectuals provoke debates through books, essays, and commentaries. They do not speak to a narrow audience, not to an expert audience that understands only technocratic jargons, but to a larger community of men and women who are interested in moving society to a higher level. The public intellectual too is thus therefore destructive thinker. He's an adjunct provocateur, an advocate, and at the same time an activist, holding a magnifying glass onto society. The trajectory of human society is growth and character, most likely to this form of intervention and destruction, encapsulated in Bolshevikin's affirmation that the man dies in all who keeps silent in the face of tyranny, or Nelson Mandela's example. In more contemporary times, the face of the public intellectual has changed significantly. The democratization of the information space and the rise of the age of convergence simply means that unlike the public intellectual of past centuries, today's public intellectual can engage through a multiplicity of platforms: books, the pulpit, lectures, speech making, television, radio, or even internet blogs. This means an expansion of influence and reach. Today's public intellectual is an authority, but this in itself generates conflict with established authority figures, whose attempts at weaponizing power and position are unmasked by men and women of ideas. Many public intellectuals are brands and celebrities as well. But how do public intellectuals establish their authority, spread their ideas, and influence the way we think and act? The topic for this presentation, as sent to me, already provides a clue: consistency, and a clear indication that this must be in the arena of advocacy. But why should consistency be important? Being consistent is about commitment, courage, and a sense of being human, devoted, and ready to make necessary sacrifices. The classical definition of this we see exemplified by the totality of Nelson Mandela's symbolism, as expressed in the Freeman's Declaration, and I quote, "For my own part, I have made my own choice. I will not leave South Africa, nor will I surrender. Only through hardships, sacrifice, and militant action can freedom be won. The struggle is my life. I will continue fighting for freedom until the end of my days. End of quote. Consistency, public intellectual advocacy, confers brand, identity, and authenticity. But it is not every public intellectual that lives to the end of their days, seeking to challenge orthodoxies through struggle, direct action, ideas, and insider participation comes with risks. Marcus Tullius Cicero, the Roman orator and philosopher, had his tongue freed from his body. His head was severe for speaking truth to power and for having the temerity to challenge constituted authority. The dilemma of public intellectualism is defines its scope and relevance. More liberal societies tend to be more appreciative of ideas than those who produce them. Closed societies, under the grips of conquerors, dictators, authorities, and tyrants, naturally suppress people's free will and those who claim to be intellectuals. In January 2016, I wrote an essay in The Guardian, Nigeria, titled "Where are the Public Intellectuals?" My theme was what I refer to as the decline of public intellectuality. Permit me to quote a little from that essay. I wrote as follows, and I quote, "Something sad has happened and is happening in our society, the decline of public intellectuality. And so I asked, where are the public intellectuals? Once upon a time in this country, the public arena was dominated by the famine of ideas, ideas that pushed boundaries, destroyed illusions, questioned orthodoxies, and enabled societal progress. Those were the days when intellectuals exerted great influence on public policy, and their input into the governance process could not be ignored. Ideas are strong elements of nation building, and even where interests are at play, you know the quality of a country by the manner in which a taste for good thinking propels the leadership process. Public intellectuals are at the center of this phenomenon. They include academics who go beyond their narrow specializations and university-based scholarship to take a keen interest in public affairs and who use their expertise and exposure to shed light on a broad range of issues. They also include journalists, writers, and other professionals who question society's direction and offer alternative ideas. The beauty of public intellectualism is that the intellectual at work is a disinterested part. He is interested in ideas not for his own benefit, but for the overall good of society. And he does not assume that his opinions are the best, or that he alone understands the best way to run society and its others. The product of this attitude is that discourse, the culture of debate, is encouraged, and in the cross-pollination of ideas, a good current of thought is created. Truth is spoken to power. End of quote. I have had cause to take a second look at those words. When I said once upon a time, I was somewhat nostalgic. I was probably referring to a period in Nigerian history that could be regarded as the best of the times in the public space. But even that would be correct in only strictly relative terms and as a measurement of how, as of 2016, Nigeria gradually become a dangerous place to express an opinion or project oneself as a public intellectual. There was a uniformity of thought, a submission to authority, group thinking, and the tension and the hijack of instruments of expression by a money political elite that was private. The seeds of the present tension may well be traced to those early beginnings. The once upon a time, in my reckoning, was to a season of famine, when the university campuses bubbled with ideas, and the Nigerian left provided thought leadership. The universities were a melting pot for ideas, as the ground fulfilled its own ideas. Borrowed John Henry Newman's contextual usage of that phrase by showing interest in the town and how the fortunes of both town and gown will transform or derate society. Across the country, many Nigerian scholars went beyond disciplinarity to test research ideas in the field of action. In Ahmadu Bello University, and the following list is by no way exhaustive, I'll probably leave out some names. We had Bala Usman and Patrick Wayman. In the University of Lagos, Professor Ayodele Awojori. At the University of Ibadan, Olaji Akinyemi, Badi Onimode, Comrade Olaoni, Femi Oshofuson, Ni Oshulare, Wade Shuande, and others. At the University of Calabar, Escutoyo, Ingrid Obotesien, Edwin and Bene Madunago. At the University of Ife, Wole Shoyinka, Biodun Jerifo, Rob Ushekuri, Oli Omotosho. At the University of Port Harcourt, Guadalajara, Chile, Amota, and others. Civil society was no less vital. From the labor movement to the creative industry and civil society organizations. Wahab Goodlaw, Azan Sumono, Gani Farini, Fela Nicola Bokuti, Bekor and Sonkuti, Aponwan for Admiral Nubisi Kano, Alawa Kabashonan, Teresa Bakoba, Clement Nwanko, Dan Suleiman, and others. And in the media, Sassam Amuka, Benu, Golabo Muson, Stanley Makebu, Obiao Fuemo, Dapolo Yori, Musai Gombo, Onome Obesi, Whiskey, Dare Babarisa, Kunle Ajubade, Dewi Gua, Reyeku, Dana Besi, Dakubu Mahamed, Chinwezu, Nero Maladu, Olatunji Dare, and others. At the time, I let out a pledge. Archbishop Bishop Bolande Goligi, Reverend Adetunji Adebi, Reverend Father Matthew Hassan Kuka, Father John Uba Ofe, Archbishop Olubumi Okoge, John Kadima Onayekon, Father George Yerusani, and others. But before the more contemporary examples, Nigeria's colonial and early post-colonial history was littered with examples of men and women who were either thought leaders or public intellectuals, and whose contributions made significant difference. The academic distinction between thought leadership and public intellectualism does not need to detail us here. That's what you prophesied me. So I don't need to interrogate what you said earlier. But as you can see, society is moved forward by a combination of influencers and public-spirited figures from diverse backgrounds playing a mixture of roles. I raised a question in 2016 because it was the moment when the decline of public intellectualism was most apparent in my view. Although much earlier in 2006, Jimanze Ego Alois, now of blessed memory, had written a book titled "Our Intellectuals Underdeveloped Nigeria and Other Essays." In 2010, Rudolph Okonkwo wrote an article titled "The Comedy of Our Public Intellectuals." I went further, and I quote again. In addition to other reasons, it may well be that our intellectuals are tired of engaging Nigeria, having tried over the years to engage the governance and elite with ideas, and to show that only good ideas should govern society, and having been spawned by the politicians. Nigeria's intellectual elites who seem to have become so frustrated, and they have retired largely in a state of indifference and inertia. What is the point? Knocking one's head against a wall. But intellectuals in society cannot take such a stand. That will amount to an abdication of responsibility. When intellectuals do no more than make righteous choices, the harvest in the long run is counterproductive. End of quote. I gave some other reasons, including the existence of a climate of fear and the hypocrisy of the power elite and the seeming disappearance of a culture of reason, opinion, and debate. It may be necessary to define, even if preliminarily, what may be responsible. For years, the Nigerian public space has been driven also by a culture of anti-intellectualism, tightly knit into the fabric of every public process. Admittedly, there were times when the military and the civilian authorities tried to embrace and co-opt public intellectuals into the public process. There have been success stories in that regard. Professor Balogun, Akin, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, and Professors George Obiozo, Joy Ogu, and Bola Akin did well, in my view, leading the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, NI, that is this institution. But there were so many of these stories of public intellectuals being brought into government simply to demystify them. General, later President Ibrahim Babangida, for example, made a good show of decorating his administration with high-profile public intellectuals, but in the end, he did listen to them. The only other Nigerian president who gave public intellectuals substantial space in the running of government were Presidents Olusegun Obasanjo and Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. But even then, what has been the impact of the presence of intellectuals in government? The Nigerian public service system is going to fail. It must be noted, nonetheless, that there was, at a point, a discussion by Nigerian public intellectuals to move from the arena of advocacy into governance in the mode of such man of action, or was as caring insider. Many public intellectuals, including journalists, who find ready role models in their own profession, either later took government positions or jumped into the arena of politics. Their experience has been very good. Akin Osuntokun, for example, once tried to obtain a form to run as a candidate for the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. With all his education and exposure in both the public and private sectors, he was disqualified on the grounds that the screening panel doubted his primary school leaving certificate. Doubt, or they had proof, or they just made it up. A far less qualified person was given the ticket. The man won the election, but he practically played post throughout his tenure in the National Assembly. There was no way an Osuntokun would have gone to the National Assembly of Nigeria to sleep. A forum that has now become, by the way, a sleeping forum for retired and tired boys. The Osuntokun experience was the experience of many of us who thought that as change agents, we could make a difference from within as caring insiders. Perhaps a more instructive example in this regard will be the experience of Professor Pams Utome in the last general elections. Professor Utome is without doubt one of Nigeria's leading public intellectuals. He has tried to be president of Nigeria of the platform of the lesser known party. He was in fact the founder of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, and he ran for the office of president in 2011. He lost. In the lead-up to the 2015 general elections, he was part of the process and the group that formed the All Progressives Congress, APC, a major opposition party at the time, but a special purpose vehicle nonetheless, and an amalgam of straight bedfellows who eventually won the 2015 presidential election. In 2019, Utome tried to be governor in his own state of Delta, in the south of Nigeria. For decades, Utome has articulated his vision of governance, politics, entrepreneurship, and policy in books, essays, public lectures, television programs, and consultancies. His attempt to become governor of Delta State in 2019 took him to a new level of understanding about the depravity of the average Nigerian and of Nigerian politics itself. His experience, agony, and frustration is well captured in his book, Why Not? Citizenship, State Capture, Creeping Fascism, and Criminal Hijack of Politics in Nigeria, 2019. Why not indeed? It is a question many Nigerian public intellectuals who seek to promote change from within the system often ask. It may also be the case that the public intellectual class in Nigeria is a victim of its own expectations. The territory comes with the celebrity status. and acquire land. And for some, Solomonic intimations of being special and wiser than the average Nigerian. It is not just established authority figures, many of who rise to positions of importance by sheer default. Even the people themselves, whose common good the public intellectual defines, are suspicious of intellectuals. Nigeria lost its moral compass even before the military took over power at the center in the 60s. And the situation has worsened with the return to democratic governance. Military dictatorship has been replaced by civilian intolerance. Access to prominent office is now equated with intellectuality, as Nigeria recruits into high office persons without morals, depth, or purpose. The people themselves are not looking for morals or purpose. The electoral process has become a money-making process dominated by money bags of dubious credentials. Okay, before I continue on your behalf, I would like to welcome to this gathering a father of the celebrant, former president of Nigeria, former head of state of Nigeria, statesman, leading thinker in Africa, one of Nigeria's founding fathers, they use that word, in the second phase of the development of Nigeria. You all know him, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, the You're welcome, sir. Happy, sir. Okay, let me continue from where I was. I was talking about the attitude, not just of established authority figures to public intellectuals, but also the attitude of the people themselves. And my suspicion is that the people do not care. For them, leadership is a scam. Nigeria has produced a generation in this regard of citizens whose alienation from state and society does not accommodate the kind of idealistic, certainly not abstract values, that public intellectuals push. The more urgent worry is how the Nigerian public elite, a class that is expected to be above board, has also become embroiled in the politics of religion, geography, and ethnicity, creating such terrible mongrels as an Igbo public intellectual or a Yoruba public intellectual, whatever that means. My third argument in this regard is the effect of the internet on public intellectualism. In North America and Europe, certain public intellectuals explore the possibilities of the blogosphere and social media to advance causes in a constructive manner. The intellectual elite that led the Nigerian struggle in the 70s and early 90s has grown into a dinosaur class that thinks that the social media is a playground for children. I've not done any empirical research to provide statistical social science support for this claim, but a broad anthropological investigation will confirm that the more informed public intellectuals are suspicious of the social media space or they do not know how it works, and hence the space has been abdicated for its inevitable seizure by 140 world influencers and citizen photographers and reporters. And in turn, this may have influenced the objection to the social media by authority figures and their agents. The social media space in Nigeria can become far more influential the moment the Nigerian public intellectual begins to embrace technology as a tool of the revolution. Any attempt to constrain the space for free expression and interaction will be an express violation of the 1999 Constitution and the people's fundamental rights. But the question may also be asked, who reads? The production of ideas must or should be complemented by a learning and reading culture and ecosystem. The audience of the Nigerian public intellectual has shrunk back in the face of the continuing neglect of the education sector. In 2021 alone, more than 500 schools were shut down in the northern parts of the country due to cases of kidnapping and terrorism. The number will be higher. Schools in the south report the proliferation of a culture of cultism and violence in schools. Both the states and the federal government promise higher investments in education, but they promise lose larger than actual effort. It is the worst of times, simply put, for Nigerian public intellectuals and scholars. As for the latter, majority of them teach in universities and research institutions. Their salaries are not repeated the offense, and they have done so again and again at every possible forum. Would this be what the organizers of today's public conversation mean about consistency in public intellectual advocacy? Or are some public intellectuals more privileged than others? In broad terms, this is the terrain in which Osuntokun operates, and the challenges that he faces, and the community of assumptions to which he belongs. Public intellectualism, I repeat, is not a job, it's a choice, a nation. For more than 30 years, Osuntokun has been involved in virtually every sphere of engagement as an intellectual in society, helping to reimagine the Nigerian society. The hallmark of his involvement is his consistency, his capacity to adapt, and his unflinching embrace of the culture of ideas and creative thinking about the demands of society. My first son and I once spent 2 nights with him in his house in Abuja, and in the course of that visit, he took me to the garden at the back of the building, where he had started a small farm, snail farming, and he was excited telling me about how to farm snails. There was also a fish pond, catfish swimming inside water rather luxuriantly. I also got some lecture about fish farming. Osuntokun also disclosed that he actually also had a bigger farm somewhere. I look forward to a free meal of snail and catfish whenever I visited him, but that didn't happen. About a year later, Osuntokun himself complained to me that his farming project did not work. The only point in my head was resentment at the people who ate or stole all the fish, and how I never got a chance to have it taste. Osuntokun may not have been able to build a consistent profile in farming, but he has, in the course of his career and efforts, done much better in the field of public intellectualism. His background, education, and experience would seem to have propelled him inexorably in the direction of the public sphere. Public intellectuals are cultural and social products, determined by factors that require closer interrogation in order to understand that striking dialectics between publics and intellectuals. In my area commentary, in this day, I highlighted background and genetics as a factor in Osuntokun's evolution as a key player in Nigeria's public space. He comes from a family of intellectuals. His great-grandfather was a community thought leader, a warrior in many battles in Yoruba land, Kiriki, Ikitiparako, and Jalumi wars. His father, the late Chief Joseph Oduola Osuntokun, was a product of the famous Furabe Collect in Sirego. He was also a leading school principal and a prominent member of the action group in Western Nigeria, until he and others parted ways with Chief Obafemi Awolowo, part genesis of the crisis in the Western region at the time. The elder Osuntokun was also a writer. A few years ago, Akin Osuntokun published his father's autobiography titled My View of the Court. 2 of his uncles have also been prominent in Nigerian history. Professor Oluwaka Osuntokun, good medalist in medicine, and one of the leading scientists in the world. There's also Professor Akin Osuntokun, who is here, emeritus professor of history, author, newspaper columnist, and former Nigerian ambassador to China. Psychoanalysis is is a useful tool in the reading of writers and public intellectuals. The metatextual context provides a clue to the author's visions and ideals, contrary to the unsuccessful death of the author, propounded by Roland Barthes and other structuralists and post-structuralists. Don't mind that, that's what they propose. The meaning in Akin Oshintokun's writings and his consistent public intellectualism advocacy can be found within the author's own sociological sphere. The scion of a warrior in pursuit of an ideal vision of society. Osuntokun also sees the public space as an arena for war, a struggle to be won between binary ideological and moral choices. What is wrong and what is right, what is good as opposed to what is bad. This probably explains the argumentative nature of his writings and the specificity of his choices. The other part of this war is a determination to sustain a family tradition, I suspect, in politics, culture, and the intellectual space. Culture and tradition also both feature prominently in Osuntokun's choices as a public intellectual. Osuntokun is a student of politics and social theory, and in this regard, two strands of influence are projected in his public work. He has over the years been involved in Yoruba traditional processes. He identifies himself affirmatively in that regard without any ambiguity. He has served in community capacities as the Balogun of Okinesi, his hometown in Ekiti. He is currently the Balogun of the same community. He has another title from Agesheiko. I don't remember what the exact title is. But I know that he is also the coordinator of the Omni Caucus, a socio-cultural interventionist group for the promotion of Yoruba interests and culture, founded by the present Omni of Ife, His Royal Majesty Adeyeye Enitan Ogunwusi of the Gadi II. Then whereas Osuntokun explores culture and tradition as basis for understanding social theory, his main role model, is Max Weber, author of The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, which is considered one of the most important books on sociological inquiry in the 20th century. Echoes of Bavarian thought inform Osuntokun's writings, his commitment to social action and understanding. One of his most recent writings, yet to be published, is a research essay written during his one-year fellowship at the University of Oxford. And it is a study of the linkages between the thoughts of Max Weber and the tropes of the eschatology in Yoruba traditions. Akin Osuntokun has worked in government. He has been active in politics and journalism. But his example raises a question. Should the public intellectual be partisan? Is the purpose and relevance of the public intellectual mitigated by his membership of a political party? In the public arena, in more than 30 years, Akin Osuntokun has never hidden his political affiliations. And whereas he cultivates and projects the habits of the contemplative class, he remains unapologetic about his political, cultural, and intellectual affiliations. At 60, his work in the public space is still developing and crystallizing.
Chairman of the occasion of I'm not often caught with my pants down. But this is one occasion that I am caught completely naked. I don't know whose idea it is that I should be called Prof, is it yours? Julie, is it yours? Ayode, is it yours?
You are the chairman now, you are in charge.
Akin, where is it? Is it yours? Ruben obviously cannot be yours. Because you will not want anybody to spoil that beautiful lecture that you have given them. And calling me forward is an anticlimax. And normally you don't want anticlimax. But you said something in your lecture that I like very much. You said Akin was a failed farmer. So anytime anybody describes me as a farmer, you know that farming is a national service. It's not where you can make profit and become like Aliko Dangote. Seriously. You have said a lot before I came, and I'm very sorry. Let me apologize for my coming late. I told Akin I will be here, and I said to him, 11 o'clock, I will be here at 11 o'clock. On Sunday, when I was on my way to Abuja, my Oba, the Olowo of Abeokuta, Uwaja. Torí ọba kì í kú, ọba máa ń wàjà ni. And I came back yesterday, and of course I had to, the governor of the state said he will want to pay a protocol. I am trying to learn that, how to pretend that I like what I don't like. Okay. Thank you for teaching me to pretend to like what I don't like. Because that's one of the things I learned from you. But knowingly or unknowingly, Akin has made tremendous contribution in the way that we move and we live in this country. If Akin makes up his mind, he will do something, he will do. When he said he was going to Oxford, I didn't really know what to say. I don't know how much encouragement I give. But he said he would do, and he did. But not only did he do, he made them there in Oxford to even make him to put something about the farm she referred to. And that's another thing I learned about Akin. I really didn't know that he's so vast in the farm. So vast that actually he could be a Balogun. No, don't lie.
Who will have been here that when he's on his way, he's parked in the traffic? Baba is asking me to keep up. So when I told him, I will tell a very brief story. When we were going to Abuja in June, so I told Baba that I was going with him, that somebody saw a vision that the plane had been compromised. So he didn't say anything. So the following day, there was my aunt, she's a prophet. She should be around. So the following day, I thought, well, if Baba is prepared to go, why not? Well, my aunt said, look, make a covenant with God, so that God will bring you back safely. So we were delayed in the airport for hours. So I then learned that Chief Adebanjo was also on the way to join us. So I said, if anything happens to this plane, there's likely to be a civil war. So I called the Onion people. Said, look, you are supposed to be the chief priest of Yoruba land. This is the situation. Are we free to go or not? So he called back to us later. He said he consulted with people to do our support. Oyeye. Only people here, Lori, I don't know. Oyeye. So he said that was the people who gave us the signal to go.
Oyeye. Ikú yẹ lórí wa jọ yẹ lọ́wọ́. Àrùn tún yẹ lórí wa. Àmọ̀ lọ àmọ̀ bọ̀. Well, he's not saying it all. When you put Akin in good mood, he will say more than Oyeye. Akin Ujobi. That's really on a very serious note. His paper in Oxford interested them to the extent that they are now calling him to do more research and make a very more detailed publication. Well, you have ambushed me. You have caught me with my pants down, and I have decided to go naked. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we put our hands together for Chief? Thank you very much, sir, for that remark.
Established.
No, Akin,
How you will survive after today, I don't know. You got our former president pants down. I don't know what I will say you have done to me, but certainly I was prepared for this. That's something I've always known. There is never a free lunch. So when you invited me and I was looking forward to the festival of ideas and the rest of it, I knew there was going to be a prize, but I didn't know what that prize would be. Now that I know, let me make some comments. First, let me pay you the tribute of saying that I look forward usually to your back page contributions to this day.
Because each time I read it, either I find something new I did not know, or I see a novel interpretation, a different way of viewing things that I thought I knew. And therefore, it leaves me with no option but to respect their intellect. But the comments I want to make is in a way to do what Chinua used to say we should always have done, which is to know where the rain started beating us. Because I don't think anybody can pretend about the fact that the greatest tragedy of Nigeria is the kind of leadership we've been afflicted with. Fortunately, things have come to the point where we are desperate, and we are no longer blaming anybody, but establishing to see what do we do to return to normality. But there is one thing that I must ask your forgiveness, because I am going to take you back to the house to remember things you perhaps wish not to remember. Nigeria is the product of two historical events. First was the slave trade, and second was the fact of colonialism. Those two things changed the environment and changed whatever it is that our people were going to do or were going to do. But we have never really, even with the brilliant historians that Nigeria has produced, we never really inquired what exactly are the permanent damage that these two historical processes did to us. We never did. And when the British decided for their own reasons to pack up and go, our leaders, whether it was Azikiwe, whether it was Balogun, whether it was even Saddam, who in other circumstances were very bright people, but they went along with inheriting what the British left. We never asked the question, now that they've gone and we're left to ourselves, what are the things we need to do? What are the shared vision and the shared values? Because that question was never asked, because that question was never answered, the result is that we inherited the prejudices and all the other things that came with colonialism. And the result is that we are grappling with the problems as we see it, but are seeing it through the eyes of outsiders, not as through our own experience in trying to understand the environment in which we now have to breathe. The result of that are two fundamental problems we cannot ignore at this point in time, 2021 in Nigeria, and that is the gap between the governors and the government. And when I'm saying governors, I'm not talking about Osu and his friends. I am talking about those who are in the status of saying what should happen to us without often consulting us to know what is it really that we want. The second is the fact that there is now a very wide gap, which we are seeing in the violence and other things we are seeing in our country now, between the youth and the elders. And the result is that we are seeing all kinds of horrible things happening within families. You will ask me, what is the answer? Well, there is no alternative but to recognize that we are in a dynamic society and in a dynamic system even at the global level. And therefore, we must learn to start doing reverse engineering even while we are trying to survive. It's going to be serious, but it can be done. Now, let me say two things that we think we must do. The result of these problems I've mentioned is the fact that there are no shared ideas in relation to Nigeria. And because you do not have shared ideas, you do not know what are the values you share. Because if you want to build a new nation, Nigeria, you must start from the point where you know what is common to all of you. And having established what is common, you can now see where you can make adjustments for good relations with the other, and where you need to say, look, this is the way I think we should do it. In other words, discussion, dialogue, and intellectual understanding and analysis is important. That is lacking. Much of what academics surprise you, much of the brilliant ideas we all spark with the intellectual, the public, and the private are borrowed ideas from other people's experience. We must get back to the point where we understand ourselves so that we can understand what we share and therefore build from there. Which is why the initiative I share with Christopher Golade, some of the press now call us burden elders, because the first public statement, we started with the words, we are burdened. We are burdened at that time, and we are still burdened today, because solving the problems of Nigeria is not going to be easy. However, that they themselves in the interaction are now not only understanding themselves, but understanding first what leadership is about, what leadership should consist in. And more importantly, that this Igbo man that is never seen that he thought was a monster is now his bosom friend, because they found the shared common interest. That experiment is going on. We've not announced it in Nigeria because we wanted to be sure that ideas were possible. We've done it for 2 years now, and God willing, the signs of the new Nigeria will start manifesting. Indeed, it's already manifesting, because, believe it or not, what we are seeing in Nigeria today is the birth pangs of the new Nigeria that is coming. So let's look for it, and the elders like me help the young ones so that it can happen before we take our leave. Thank you very much.
Once more, let's put our hands together for Professor Ayan, O-S-R-N-N-O-M. Thank you very much, sir, for that very wonderful response to today's lectures. We want to, in that same vein of recognizing people who have joined us in here, we want to recognize the presence of Venerable Professor Akin Fasaki. We want to recognize the presence and also recognize the presence of Pastor Ayodele.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, what a beautiful day we are having. I would like to congratulate the organizers of this occasion. I've been to this hall several times over the last 3 decades. This is one of the few occasions when you have a serious lecture. You also have some police band by the side. It was something that is this is also one of the few occasions when the reason for the get-together, the celebrants, are either strategic enough or humble enough to be off from the high table. And I'd like to greet you, Akin. On this occasion, we are surprised, but not surprised, to have the former head of state here, Balogun. From what he has said, in his very peculiar way, he is one of the luckiest Nigerians who can afford to be himself. Come what may, say what he wants. He is himself, he says it as it is. It's all the grace of God Almighty. But what I think we should do to him is to insist that he should be blessed by a guest speaker. By the way, we couldn't have had a better guest speaker. This is a man who is multi-talented. You see him on television. Every subject matter that comes, he is fully researched. And that's reflected by your delivery today. But the case of the intellectual in the public place is not new. But we can never finish discussing it. You can trace it all the way to Desiderius Erasmus from Rotterdam. He was the one who started this school of discussing the intellectual in public space. Today, that argument still continues. Should the intellectual get involved in public space, or should the public be interested in intellectualism? But that's how it continues. I'd like to congratulate you, Ruben. I know that you have, as an intellectual, tried to get into the public space by way of politics. And I know that you are not very happy at the end. But it's one step after another, and you will continue to climb Jacob's ladder. It will be okay with you. Now, that presentation was good, but I'd like to see it from a different perspective, or an additional perspective. And that's the perspective that, well, here is this young man, Akin, big father, big grandfather, Balogun this, and all those kind of things. I have a weakness. And the weakness is that behind every male person who claims anything is a woman who is hardworking. And I believe that all those stories, Akin must make sure now that henceforth, when the stories are being put into writing, your mother must get involved in the documentation. Just like I say, that Ronke has been the one that has been a stabilizer, Ronke your wife. So it's not just Akin, there's also Ronke. Let's give a round of applause to woman. I believe that mankind itself would not have reached where we have reached without womankind. And I'm proud of the women who are here. Now, having said that, I'm actually speaking more or less in loco parentis. I have known Akin all his life. I was a contemporary of his mother, bless her soul. In our own little city, we had a boys and girls and practicalized, if necessary. You're welcome here. So I think, round up, I'd like to compare Akin with somebody who is actually highly comparable. And this person who is highly comparable is Charles Andre Joseph Marie de Gaulle. Charles de Gaulle. Why do I say so? You know, Akin was born on the 24th of November, 1961. And Charles de Gaulle was born on the 22nd of November in, of course, France. Akin comes from not the biggest town in the world, and de Gaulle didn't come from the biggest town in the world. He actually was born in his village and buried in his village, and the village, as you know, is called Colombey dos Aguilles. So he was the kind of person who was village bound, but who, like you, worried about the situation. When Charles de Gaulle was 60, like you, he was in some kind of political, abandonment. But by the time he was 69, he became the president of France and ruled France till 1969, before he died in 1970, 80. Now you are 60. Let me tell you, Akin, you have, by being 60, you have gone around the sun 60 times. So it's no mean feat. You may be taciturn, you may be argumentative, you may be whatever anybody calls you, but you know your son. And you know that as my son, we know ourselves. Don't give up. The potential to perform is very much there. And the options of performance are also very much there. The strategy of achieving your goal is also very available. All you need to do is regroup. It is the same de Gaulle who, looking around at the age of 60, said, "Comme on fait son lit, on se couche." In other words, as one makes one bed, one would lie on it. It is the duty of the younger generation to say, this bed on which we are all lying is no good. It's time to change that particular sleeping bed. Change the sheets. Change the environment. And it's only then that we can say to ourselves, Nigeria is going to arrive. My plea to you, Akin, is that using your talents, all we have as Chibatembajo comes in, is to hope in Nigeria again, to pray for Nigeria. Long live Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that very wonderful response by our very distinguished Prince Julius Adeluyi. Daddy, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for that very wonderful. Please once more, let's celebrate our daddy, Prince Julius Adeluyi. Thank you very much. I want to sincerely appreciate all our time, and of course that we'll be here for several hours to celebrate the birthday of our dearly beloved father, our brother and our friend, Balogun Akin Osuntokun at 60. On a quick one, we want to give a birthday wishes. We want to give a birthday wishes, and of course we have just few names that are here that we want to give the microphone to celebrate him. Maybe they have one or two words to say to him in celebrating 6 decades that God has been preserving his life and all that he has been doing on planet Earth. We want to quickly welcome to the microphone our father, someone that we make known to his name very well in Nigeria and of course in Africa, is no other person but Pastor Itua Igudalo. We want to welcome him to the microphone to give Okay, quickly, I would also ask to call out the names of the others so you don't leave. We have our distinguished Senator Ibikule Amosun. We also going to be given a birthday wishes to the celebrant. We also have Mrs. Tinu Fabuya, who also We need you to be in the house. We need you to have or give the celebrants and birthday wishes. Quickly, we'd like to welcome to the microphone. Okay, the others, all right? This is Tony Saraki also. Mommy, we also need you to give a birthday wishes to the celebrant. And of course, Dr. Wale Papa Laki, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, we also need you to give a birthday wishes to the celebrant. Let's put our hands together for Pastor.
Amen. Praise the name of the Lord. It is indeed my pleasure to be here to give birthday wishes and felicitations to somebody that I have grown to know and love over the years, and somebody that I call my brother. Let me quickly observe all protocols. His Excellency, the former President of Nigeria, President Obasanjo, and also the Chairman of the day, my uncle Julius Adedosi, and my uncle Professor Osuntokun, and of course my friend and compatriot Ruben Abati. My brother Akin, I wish you very well. I thank God that God has kept you this past 60 years. You need to take it easy now. I'm not saying you should not continue with your writing. The way you are doing it, please realize now that you are an adult. And on Nigeria, for me, I'm an incredible optimist. I believe that despite all these challenges, we're almost there, and we will get there. And I like what Prince Adams said. Yes, there may not be these challenges. I'm seeing these challenges, yes. But what I see more is the progress that we're going to make. Is the Nigeria of our dream. So, whatever happens, we should be resolute that there must be a solution. And we'll find that solution once we have the way. Look at the number of years that it took China. Everybody has been saying it. So we can get it right here in Nigeria. We have all the human capital to do it. We have all the resources to do it. And I'm happy that my brother is here, my brother governor of the state is here. We, every time and again when we meet, this is what we say. But one critical thing, intellectuals, all of them, please don't say, oh, we don't want to be part of what we are doing. It is when we join what we are doing that Nigeria will be great. And as always, the guest lecturer, thank you. We've taken some things from what you said, and we will continue to do our bit. So once again, thank you, Prof. Thank you, all those that have said one or two things. Well, when I go to functions like this, what I do is to try to pick one or two things away, so that there must be some takeaways that will say, oh, okay, so we can do this way. Or if we have done this, this is what we get. But all in all, I believe that we are going to get that Nigeria for our dream. So congratulations. Thank you. God bless you.
All right. On a quick one, before we call up the next person to come give a birthday wishes to the celebrant, we'd like to give a special recognition to one of our fathers that just stepped in while Prince Julius was giving a speech. We'd like to recognize our father, Chief Ayo Adibanjo, OFR.
But I'm on my knees before Baba Obasanjo, who is about my favorite person in this nation. Thank you so much for coming. I celebrate the governor of my state, and I thank you for coming. Thank you, sir, Chief Ademisi, and my uncle, Ekudo Kusai. I'm the first child of my father, Chief Oduola Osuntokun. My name is Tinola Faboya. I and my brother Akin together sat together and decided to publish our father's autobiography after he passed. Actually, I promised him I would do it, but I know that if I involved Akin, he would get it better done and faster too. That's something about Akintola. Whatever comes to his mind, I think by God, to do, he will do it. He might involve a few people, discuss with some elders. Often he discusses with me too. And I appreciate him, very proud of him. In fact, today I'm sure our father is absolutely turning in his grave, celebrating his son. Akin is not the first son, he's the second born of his own mother. My father had a couple of wives. Praise God. He said that the women came after him, and it wasn't he that went after the women. But that's great legacies, and many of us are following. Today, I wish I could put that the very best. I showed one of my friends, a very notable lady, prominent, the writing by Mr. Abati, this lady. And after she read it, she said, Akin for president. That is what I wish you to. Akin for president. My president, all my governors that are here today, my elders, my professors, and my mother. I stand before you not on my own behalf, I stand before you on behalf of the army of the first eminent caucus of the sons and daughters. We're very, very proud. I call Akin my brother. I haven't known him as long as you have known him, but I would say that the contribution that he has made is not just in public intellectual advocacy, but also in private and collective intellectual advocacy and action. Earlier on this year, I was invited by my brother Akin to contribute to a very unique gathering of Yoruba intelligentsia and minds across the nation, across parties, and for some of us like me, without a party specifically, even though I do have a derivative party of marriage. And he called us all to action and to duty, not just on the culture of our Yoruba heritage, but on the future progress within this great nation that is called Nigeria. And during this short period of mentorship, which I know will go on for many years, because he is my mentor, he has shown us that everybody who wishes to lead in this country, irrespective of sector, must be seen as belonging to us all, must be seen as being guided by us all, and must be seen by listening to us all. So this is a movement that I pray will progress in Nigeria. You know, I'm sitting in a row of people who, some of them would be called my husband's enemies, but I smile at everybody because it's important to me and to all of us that I count all of you as my own. So I say my governor, my president, my thought leader, my professor, my commentator, my governor, my father, because Nigeria belongs to us all. My brother Akin has taught us this, and in this way we will all make our contributions through those who we have elected, appointed, chosen, and prayed for as our leaders. So I want to say happy 60th birthday. This is a movement, this is a peaceful revolution, and it is something that I hope will live to Nigeria until every Nigerian has a sense of inclusiveness in the decisions that are taken on our behalf. Happy birthday and God bless. Thank you.
Ọlọ́run wà fẹ́yìn náà ẹ̀mí gbígbì tí ẹ lọ. The Chief Ade Louis, the guest speaker, Professor Osuntokun, Baba Aladivanjo, and all the dignitaries there. Let me say that I'm always delighted when I find my contemporaries that I'm older than. I have made fun of Akin for the past 1 year because I'm a senior brother. But on a more serious note, let me start by saying I listened attentively to Ruben Abati, and I should give a caveat. I am not a practicing politician, but I enjoy political discourse. Akin and I are in regular arguments, even though for many occasions we take different positions. But one thing of concern to me, which I want all of us to think about, is how did we end up creating a nation where the best talents are not in the best positions? How did we end up creating a nation where the best talents are not in the best positions? I believe that all the efforts of the political leaders, our greatest challenge today is the shortage of human capital. Nigeria today has serious shortage of human capital. You should try and conduct interviews with the younger generation, and you will discover that a lot has to be done to rebuild this country educationally. When Chief Ken Ishifola turned 10 years, his children invited me as a guest lecturer on the emergence of the legal profession. And I went into research, and I discovered that in England and the US, all the House of Lords judges in England finished in Oxford or Cambridge, apart from one that came from Scotland. In America, with 50 states, all the Supreme Court judges came from 4 universities: Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and Columbia. How have they created a system where they allow intellectual capacity to develop? My profession is in dire straits today in Nigeria because what our fathers meant is not what you have today. If you pick up the CV of a professor of law in Oxford or Cambridge, is the same CV of the High Court judge in England, and it's the same CV of the top QC in England. They have done this to ensure that justice is dispensed with ease, that you're not going to court to talk about elementary matters because the High Court judge presiding is a reporter of knowledge. We have created inadvertently a system now where even lawyers feel superior to judges. A situation where a senior advocate of Nigeria believes that he is superior to a High Court judge is the direct evidence of the failure of the legal system. It is the best senior advocates, the best QCs who aspire to the judiciary. And this is not the time for me to deliver an alternative lecture, but it's a topic that bothers me extensively, and I believe we have a solution. Akin, my guru and friend, fascinates me. Once he came to my house and the discussion began and tried to recite the fact, I said, what is this about again? He started to recite the fact. I said, what are you talking about? Then he told me that, look, ignorance has taken over Nigeria. That the IFA, the volume of IFA is 16 times the Bible. That most people never go beyond the first or the second tranche. That to become a proper IFA priest, you needed training for 16 to 20 years of concentrated work. Then he woke up one day and said he was going to Oxford. I was very fascinated. It's always nice to see these Oxford boys coming to Oxford or Cambridge. But then he came on holiday and said he had discovered a link between IFA and Max Weber. Then I became very serious. I'm waiting for the thesis. I think it will be a fascination that the level of social engineering in our local religion, which we ignore and refuse to learn, is what we are paying for. Gentlemen, I pray that this young man God will turn all his stumbling blocks to stepping stones for the attainment of greater heights. God will guide him through, and that there will be a new Nigeria. Thank you, and thank you.
Thank you very much. The lecturer, who was my very good friend and brother, he knows me the only way the lecturer can do it. All right. I didn't know you were going to start this department. As you were referred to, the father of the ceremony, I feel like a surrogate father for me. And people ask me how we got along when you were president. I said, I didn't see you as president, I saw you as a father figure. And I talked to you like that. I related to you like that. Sometimes you get annoyed. So you, this stupid boy, what do you have to say? Yeah. My brother, the governor, I told him that today is not governor, he's my chairman. He is the chairman of this occasion. Thank you very much. For 2 years, yeah? He knew me before I was born. My uncle is also my mentor, so I can see him. Baba, I'm a bit angry with you, Baba. We are very late. I know the reason why I leave, but nonetheless, but I'm forgiving you. Well, you know, I don't like mysteries. I like to demystify things. I like to get to the core of things. And then, of course, what will strike anybody in our generation, maybe the generation before our own, is the growing irrelevance of Africa. And I think that it has to do with, we say, if you don't know where you are going, you should know where you are coming from. And when I was going to Oxford, out of curiosity and sense of self, why shouldn't I know? Because, those who don't, most people who pass comments on African traditional religion don't actually know anything about it. Right? From my own study, actually, Ifa is the most ethically oriented religion you can ever see. Right? Yeah, and I will now recite and note. Orumila actually recommended Balogun. He said, "We go so pray on the Molili Oko. Only to my divinity, not to Fofo. To all the men that were today. To all the men who are to do. Somebody men man who are the So you see, but I'm sure that most people didn't know. Look at and irrationalize it. If you forget that is Ifa, look at what he has said about life, and you will see the validity of the position that he's taking. And you see what you call Udufa is something that is so profound that the problem is that people don't even want to listen before they pass the comment. Right? And Ifa is something right, is the most detached when it's making recommendation for anybody. There's a level of objectivity about how it relates to society. Ifa cannot, as a matter of fact, tell you to go and be a pastor. I recommend you that is where you are lying. It's as objective and neutral as that. So, I went to Oxford on the basis of a proposal to write on the contemporary politics of Nigeria. So when I got there, at the African Studies Center, I said, oh, what is it that I want to teach these people at Oxford about Nigerian politics? What is the new thing? What is it that they don't know? I'd like to impress. So I said, well, definitely IFA is one area that, no, but the thing is that it actually came as a flash of inspiration. One of my best teachers, Max Weber, he had this thesis, and like somebody said, it has been the most talked about thesis in the past 1 century, and that he has seen no evidence that it will not remain like that for another 1 century. And that is the origin of capitalism. You see, he attributed the development of capitalism to the Protestant ethic, their own religion, right? It was a very unique thesis, by any stretch of the imagination. So, and what he formulated was that he said, he predicated on 3 things. One, those Protestants, the Calvinists, that they were not motivated by instant gratification. Those who made capitalism succeed, they saw it as a vocation, right? That before, there was this belief among them that predestination, that everybody, no matter what you do, you have either been condemned to hell or you are going to heaven even before you are born. So he then said, look, the only way to motivate somebody to do well is that, look, if you not do well in this world, right? If you are an honest and ethical person in the pursuit of your business, that also qualifies you to be a member of the elect, right? And so he did it on 3 things: the individuals or the patrons of the Calvinists. Second was predestination, only Ori, that only to go outside. The third is Iwa. So, and this is, so from my own study, I discovered that the Calvinists, they have a correlate, they have a corresponding figure in Yoruba mythology, and that is Obatala. Obatala is the god of purity, saintly, ethical, and everything. And in Ifa tradition, Obatala is a patron saint of wealth, of capitalism. Right? And of course, only in the Yoruba tradition correlates to predestination. But in the same, and this is again where Ifa is.
Thank you very much. We've had a wonderful almost 4 hours of reflection, right from Ruben's magnum opus on public intellectuals to Baba's reflection on Ifa and Akin's contribution to knowledge on the Odu Ifa, and to the contributors' response to the lecture and all of what we've had. I think as Nigerians, as citizens of the world, there's a lot to take away from this session, not least the value to be attached to intellectual reflection in what we do as citizens, but also in governance. And talking about Baba not writing, I don't know what informed that comment, but I know from the little that I know of Baba is always writing. I was with Baba yesterday morning at 8:30 in the morning. He was writing. And about Nigeria, I once traveled with Baba from Addis Ababa to Lagos. The journey was about 4 hours. I was sitting right next to him, definitely a much younger man. And Baba wrote a speech throughout the 4-hour duration of the flight, a speech that I was going to deliver that evening in Lagos when we landed. And I'm not sure I could even do that. Not many young people, half Baba's age, can do that. And that's the capacity it demonstrates, the relentlessness of his passion for our country. When I saw him yesterday, it was about what to do with Nigeria. How do we move from where we are to a better Nigeria? And that is also what Akin represents. Even when you don't agree with him, you cannot ignore him. You cannot ignore his contributions to knowledge and to improving the Nigerian condition. Because none of us is happy about the Nigeria predicament. And that is why we all want a better Nigeria, a new Nigeria, a Nigeria that responds to the yearnings of all its citizens. And on that note, it's been a wonderful experience chairing this session, but the struggle continues. The responder, my father, Prince Julius Adeli, we talked about Samora Machel. And one thing that Samora Machel said that should be a big issue for us also as we ruminate over the Nigerian condition that many people still quote. It was Samora Machel that said, for the nation to be born, the tribe must die. But part of allowing the tribe to die is also recognizing that the tribe is a product of our history. Colonialism did not introduce us to ourselves. The Nupes and the Yoruba and the Hausa have been interacting in various ways centuries before colonialism. So to blame colonialism for the Nigerian condition is a half-truth, and we're not the only colonized people. Having said that, I think we cannot continue to remain in our tribal bunkers, because pragmatism and dynamism of our culture have also ensured that we've interacted and miscegenated and mixed up with one another in such a manner that you don't even know who exactly is a Yoruba. I've read somewhere in the Osuntokun history that there is a Fulani connection to the Osuntokun. I don't know if that's true, but I've read that in the books. So we all have mixed up our reflections, and our fathers and leaders will know more about that. But let me also add finally that I'm glad that Baba Adebanjo is here. Our father is here, and even though he came in late, he would always associate himself with his progressive children in all ways, even when he's angry with us and he tells us what we're not doing right. He never gives up on us. So Baba, he knows what I'm saying, so I won't go further than that. So on that note, I really want to thank my sister Runke for also our tolerance level, for our capacity to cope with my brother in all of his intellectual peregrinations and cantankerousness, the bit that Ruben said he refused to elaborate on. But congratulations, Akin. We from Ekiti are very proud of you and your contributions to the Nigerian project. And the struggle must continue. You must not give up, and you will not give up. I thank you and thank all our fathers and all the people who are present here for honoring Akin with your distinguished presence. Thank you. God bless us all.
Thank you.
Hold on, sir. Pictures.
Order of photographs, please, as we all exchange pleasantries.
Your Excellency, sir.
Order of photographs. Thank you. In the back.
Ọjọ́ ìbí ṣe pàtàkì, ó ṣe kókó.
Hey!